I grew up in Connecticut and attended a Pentecostal church. And around age 7, I gave my life to Christ and was baptized. And I spent most of my young life close to the Lord throughout middle school and high school. But then towards the end of high school, I started to have a spirit of rebellion just develop. And I began partying and drinking. I had 3 different relationships from age 17 to 25. With 3 different guys, all of which cheated on me. So I started having trust issues in my heart. One of my boyfriends had an addiction to pornography, and that became a regular part of our relationship. I had premarital sex. I was drinking and smoking weed and partying and going to clubs, and I even got arrested, all because I just chose to turn my back on God and everything that I knew was right. So I was filled with guilt and shame and rejection in 2009, and I just felt spiritually empty. And I knew I needed to make a change. And so I packed up my entire life, loaded it in a U-Haul, and I headed to Florida. I was a prodigal daughter running from God, but He was just a faithful God and had His arms wide open there to welcome me. And so when I got to Florida, He connected me with a new church, and I began seeking His word. And I repented from the sexual sin and other sins that I had going on in my life at that time. A few years later, He sent me to an orphanage in Haiti where He removed the desire that I had in my heart to have biological kids. And He also told me that my eyes needed to be fixed on Him, that my attentions and affections for men needed to be on Him instead. And so for the next 4 years, I went through this journey of singleness where I didn't date anyone. I asked God to veil my eyes and to only give me eyes for my husband. I prayed for faith like Job so that I would just trust in God's goodness and His plan for me. Then in March 2015, I went to Inner Healing for the first time. I had been a part of Bow Down for a few years, and I had a really close relationship with Colleen as she was mentoring me. And in Inner Healing, my singleness and the fact that I was really sad that I was still single in my 30s came up. And we just prayed through that, and we prayed for my future husband. We prayed for the exact qualities that I would want in a future husband. And then in June of 2015, Chris and Colleen cleverly concocted this plan for Tyler and I to be in the same place at the same time, and the rest is history. I met Tyler, and he became my best friend. And then in 2017, I got to marry my best friend and somebody that I think is the greatest in the world. So we had a really easy first year of marriage. A lot of people talk about how hard it is, but I was just blessed to be married to somebody who was so awesome and just met my needs. But one battle that we did face was we were unable to conceive. So for the first 3 years of our marriage, we tried to have biological children, and we couldn't. And then in November of 2020, I got a phone call, and I was diagnosed with breast cancer. At that moment, it became clear to Tyler and I of why God withheld biological children from us. We knew that we were going to face the fire and that we needed to just be completely focused on God through that process. And so I went through surgery. I got a double mastectomy. I also went through reproductive surgery, but God was just in it all. And prayer after prayer, down to the most specific details, He answered every single one of our prayer. And in March, He answered one of our biggest prayer requests, which was to have a family. And overnight, what was a tragedy for 4 children became one of God's greatest gifts, greatest blessings, and greatest miracles for Tyler and I, because we got a family. When I think of my story, God's faithfulness is just threaded throughout it. He took me from a place of being a wayward child, and He restored me to right relationship with Him. He took me from a place of me feeling like I was never going to get married and I was going to be single forever, to sending me one of the most godly men that I know. He took me from a place of me thinking I was going to die of cancer, and then just, like I said, prayer request after prayer request, He just delivered and He healed me. He sent me a family and gave Tyler and I what our hearts had always desired. I just needed to be patient, and I just needed to wait on Him, because in God's faithfulness, He always works things out for my good.